Look at almost any large cargo ship and you'll notice something strange. Above the water, it might be painted blue, white, green, or practically any color you can imagine. But underneath, red. And it's not just cargo ships. Tankers, cruise ships, container ships, and countless other vessels often have that distinctive red or reddish-brown section below the waterline. But why? Is it rust? Is red somehow better at surviving underwater? Or is there a secret maritime rule that says every ship must have a red bottom? Well, the real answer is much more interesting, and it involves an enemy that's been attacking ships for centuries. Because the moment you put a ship in the ocean starts trying to grow things on it. And if you don't stop them, things can get surprisingly ugly. The first thing to understand is that the red color itself isn't really the important part. What's important is the coating underneath it. The part of the ship below the waterline is constantly exposed to seawater, and seawater is full of organisms that would love to make your ship their new home. Barnacles, algae, seaweed, mussels, and countless microscopic organisms. They attach themselves to the hull and begin building what is essentially a tiny underwater ecosystem. And this creates a huge problem, because a ship is supposed to move through water, not move through water while carrying an entire reef on its back. And this problem is much older than modern steel ships. In fact, sailors have been fighting it for thousands of years. Long before container ships existed, ships were largely made from wood, and wooden hulls had a serious problem. Marine organisms could attach themselves to the surface, while certain creatures, particularly shipworms, could actually burrow into the timber. This could weaken the hull itself. But even if the organisms weren't destroying the ship, they could still cause another problem: drag. Imagine trying to run while someone keeps attaching bits of Velcro to your clothes. You could probably still move, but you wouldn't enjoy it. The same thing happens to a ship. The more growth covering the hull, the harder it becomes to push through the water. And that means slower ships, longer journeys, and more fuel consumption. Eventually, sailors discovered that copper could help. Copper sheathing became widely used on wooden ships because it helped protect the hull from marine growth and certain forms of biological damage. And this discovery would eventually lead to the modern solution: anti-fouling paint. Modern ships use specialized coatings designed to prevent marine organisms from attaching themselves to the hull. These are known as anti-fouling coatings. And here's the clever part: the paint isn't necessarily trying to make the hull beautiful, it's trying to make the hull an absolutely terrible place for a barnacle to live. Historically, copper-based compounds were important because they could interfere with organisms attempting to colonize the hull, and some of those compounds produced the familiar reddish color we associate with the bottoms of ships. So the next time you see a red ship underwater, don't think that's a very committed color scheme. Think that's an anti-barnacle defense system. Because without this protection, the hull could gradually become covered in marine life. And that isn't just a cosmetic problem, it can have a serious impact on the ship's efficiency. But there's a catch. Some of the chemicals that were incredibly effective at keeping ships clean turned out to be pretty bad for the ocean. For decades, the shipping industry relied on powerful anti-fouling chemicals, and one of the most notorious was tributyltin, or TBT. It was extremely effective. Marine organisms had a very strong opinion about it. Unfortunately, scientists discovered that TBT could also cause serious harm to marine life. So the solution to keeping ships clean was creating another environmental problem. And this created a difficult dilemma. Ships need clean hulls. A fouled hull creates more resistance. More resistance means more engine power. More engine power means more fuel, and more fuel means more emissions. But if the chemicals used to stop marine life from growing on the hull are themselves damaging marine ecosystems, you have a problem. So the industry had to find a better solution, and this is where things start to change. Today, ships don't necessarily need to be red. Modern anti-fouling coatings come in different colors, and technology is increasingly looking for ways to prevent organisms from attaching without relying so heavily on toxic substances. Some newer foul release coatings use extremely smooth surfaces, including silicone-based materials, making it much harder for marine organisms to get a good grip. Instead of poisoning the barnacle, the idea is essentially to make the barnacle slip off, which sounds slightly less like warfare and slightly more like an elaborate practical joke. And there's a much bigger reason why all of this matters. Keeping a ship's hull clean isn't just about making it look nice, it's about efficiency. A cleaner hull creates less resistance. Less resistance means less fuel, and less fuel means lower operating costs and fewer emissions. So that familiar red section beneath a ship isn't simply a color choice. It's the result of hundreds, even thousands, of years of humans fighting an ongoing battle against the ocean. Because the moment a ship enters the water, something underneath is already trying to move in. And if the ship's owners aren't careful, the barnacles might just win.